Wendy Williams was pushed out of the industry and labeled as crazy because she chose to speak up instead of staying quiet. Now, Katt Williams has come forward, explaining what he believes was done to her and even pointing out who he thinks could be targeted next. It paints a picture of Hollywood as a place where fear and manipulation are often used to keep people in line.
I infiltrate the Illuminati, find out what the fuck they got going on, get the information, run back to y'all, tell y'all everything I know. That's my motherfucking job. But I don't know how many more times I'm gonna be able to sneak in there. Thanks to Shannon Sharp and 90 million views, I can't sneak very often. So while I was in there this last time, knowing that my last report might be my last report, I went in there and I got information for everybody. Look at my white friends. Us too? That's right, white secrets.
Katt Williams says powerful people in Hollywood have tried more than once to shut him down. He claims he was offered money, relationships, fame, and roles in major films, but he turned it all down. According to him, those deals always came with conditions he wasn't willing to accept. In a recent interview with Theo, Katt shared how surprised he was by the level of influence Harvey Weinstein had. He alleges that Weinstein even offered him access to any actress he wanted, but when it became clear Katt couldn't be controlled, things changed. After refusing these offers, Katt says he was pushed out of the industry and portrayed negatively in the media. He also claims he lost job opportunities because he wasn't comfortable taking on certain roles, including dressing as a woman. According to Katt, this is how control works. Once someone signs a big contract, they're expected to follow every demand without question. He believes the situation became even more serious when he stood his ground. He says people went after his personal life, including his family. At one point, he was labeled unfit as a parent and had to spend years in court just to regain access to his children.
This is their 9th time coming to my house. The problem was this time they came to my office and took my kids from an office. Not from my house, from an office. So now when I can't have my kids at my office,
that's an issue.
I must be
the
most terrible black dude. Because here's the whole thing. You gonna charge me with child endangerment? After I adopted 7 children and had them for 14 years in this state? Really? You coming after my kids now? Because it was already a witch hunt. Now you want my babies? Yikes.
Many people say this situation feels very similar to what happened to Wendy Williams. She spoke openly about her views on certain groups gaining influence in Hollywood, and claimed that figures like Diddy Combs were pushing performers to act in more feminine ways. After sharing these opinions, Wendy was labeled as unstable and, according to the story, even kept away from her children following an interview. Back in 2013, Wendy also talked about what she saw as changes in hip-hop culture. While discussing rappers' fashion, she mentioned that hidden identities had long been part of the industry, even going back to the 1980s. She further claimed that she lost her job after attempting to speak publicly about Diddy's personal life.
Right, well, Kanye had the kilt. And then ASAP had the long dress.
Yeah.
Have you seen the ASAP picture?
Yeah, I'm not down with any of that. I mean, wouldn't be my man.
No?
No.
We brought in Lord Jamar from Brand New because he had made some comments about that.
What did he say?
Well, he talked about the whole feminization of hip hop culture from the 80s on.
I think he's taking the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about how when we were younger, you wear an ear in your left ear, and that was considered straight, and the ear in your right ear, that'd be gay. And then at one point, people started wearing both earrings, and And
then they started wearing girl pants, and then they're wearing jeggings, and then, yes, it's very effeminized, but be very clear, there were lots of homosexuals in hip hop back in the 80s too, that was. What's worse, hip hop wearing skirts or hip hop being closeted and having a plethora of kids to prove manhood that, and denial of something that you shouldn't have to deny, which is your sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I hear what Jamar is saying, but we come from a very homosexual era of hip hop as well. There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle.
Not long after that interview, it's claimed that Wendy Williams was suddenly diagnosed with serious health issues and pushed out of the spotlight. According to this version of events, she was placed under strict supervision in a medical facility and heavily medicated, all after speaking out about Sean Diddy Combs. Some now argue that those actions weren't about her health at all, but were meant to silence her. They believe she was unfairly removed from the public eye simply because of what she said.
A series of depositions that not only prove that she's being held against her will, but also threaten to dismantle the Hollywood pedophile ring's sinister web of coercion and control. We've got the tapes, and they're shocking. It's clear that Wendy is currently living in fear for her life. They're locking up a mentally stable woman who holds incriminating evidence against some of the world's most powerful people. And they're doing it in broad daylight in front of the entire world.
Wendy Williams is locked in a room in an assisted living facility in New York. That's her. The only way I could interview her was to have a camera in the street because we can't get a camera in. She can't really have any visitors. She cannot go outside. She's been out twice in the last 30 days. She has no internet. She, and I think rightly says, she feels like a prisoner.
Terms of Wendy's guardianship seem to be extreme. I've spoke to her several months ago, and she just sounds like the same Wendy. Yes, is she quirky? Sure. Is she eccentric? Sure. She always has been.
Now there's another update. According to Wendy Williams' team, a new medical evaluation ordered by her court-appointed representatives found that she does not have frontotemporal dementia. They say this result should clear up the claims about her condition. At the same time, Gene Deal, a former bodyguard for Sean Diddy Combs, has alleged that Wendy was pushed out of Hollywood because of powerful figures, not because of any illness. Some believe this situation shows how harsh the industry can be toward people who speak openly. According to these claims, Wendy has been kept in a controlled care setting and placed on ongoing medication for years, with supporters arguing she has not been treated fairly.
See, what people don't understand about Puff is that he held the entertainment grip, especially for the people who was his former artists, in a chokehold. If you didn't do what he say do, if he didn't like you, you would never ever work for Bad Boy or anybody in the entertainment business again. He did it to Kirk Burrows. You understand? He did it to Wendy Williams. He did it to a lot of people, bruh. So now her going back is just wanting to get food on her table, keep a roof over her head. Because nobody was probably telling her, yo, I can't work with you. I can't deal with you unless Puff say so. I'm not gonna work with you. I'm not gonna do anything, because they didn't want to make him mad because he had enough power in the business to stop her.
According to Katt Williams, once the industry realizes it can't control someone, it simply pushes them out. He claims that even artists with contracts worth hundreds of millions can suddenly be labeled as unstable, giving companies a reason to cancel deals without paying them. The idea he presents is that as long as performers are making money and following instructions, everything runs smoothly. But the moment they try to take control of their own careers or stop playing along, powerful executives are ready to cut ties and move on from them, no matter the cost.
In order for the type of ratings we need and attention to be on this thing. See, what I'm saying is, in business, nothing is coincidental, or you will be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up and up. So they killed this $20 million guy, but they reaped $60 million in benefits.
Wow.
And they had some people from your city do it.
Wow.
I'm saying there's the good side and the bad side of these businesses. And
but think about what you just think about what you just said. That's extremely thoughtful and powerful.
The situation is often compared to what happened with Dave Chappelle. According to the claim, he was pushed aside and lost out on a massive contract because he refused to go along with what was expected of him. He was also labeled negatively, which affected how people saw him. Some believe that when one artist is pushed down, another steps in and benefits. One reaction online summed it up by saying it was unfair, especially for someone as talented and respected as Dave.
You say that, but your
we
fans
take it
have a
another way.
difference of opinion.
We your fans. We think you cold.
Prove my points.
Well, that's why I said your fans have a difference of opinion.
But Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us. And until we deal with that, until we deal with the fact that a devout Muslim who doesn't eat bacon was accused of being a crackhead, until we establish the fact that they said that he went to Africa to smoke cocaine when we know they don't have running water and food over there, when they don't have paved roads over there. You saying he flew past Chicago and Miami and LA and New York and Detroit. You saying he went past Cleveland and Fort Pierce, Florida, and he went past Okeechobee and Oakland. You saying he went to another country where they're not eating?
Right.
You talking about somebody who has a wife and children, 5 children, and lives on a farm, doesn't live here in Hollywood. You saying you convince people that person was an insane crackhead? Wow. And he hasn't been on movies and TV for 8 years? Is that correct? Wow. Okay, then don't tell me about what you want to tell me about. I just watched you decapitate the king in front of me. And then act like he's supposed to catch up and be a regular comedian like everybody else. But no.
He didn't go for that.
That's not how it went. He was out there with us for 20 years. They called him Pilot Boy because he had 19 pilots in Hollywood and everybody passed on him and said his show wasn't worth it.
What do you think of
Then when he made $500 million, they said even though his contract said he should get half of it, they said he made too much for the contract to be valid, so we'll offer you 10% of what you made. You mean he made $500 million and they offered him 50? Yes. And he said, what do you think my fans are gonna say when they find out you offered me 10% of what I made you? And they said, your fans will believe that you're a crazy crackhead by the time you get home. And my nigga got on the flight in LA, and by the time he got to Ohio, it was so. And 8 years later, he hasn't been in a movie and or television. Is just now trying to do his real comeback at Radio City Music Hall.
Back in 2017, Katt Williams spoke openly about the industry. He said that to succeed in Hollywood, people are often pressured to give up their values. He also claimed that certain powerful producers misuse their influence in serious and harmful ways. In his statements, he mentioned names like Sean Diddy Combs and Jeffrey Epstein as key figures.
Everybody is a supplier. Epstein, Weinstein, like these guys knew what these extremists liked and provided it, and provided the way for you to to have $1 billion and not create a fantasy island type environment has not existed throughout history.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I was going to run some global power organization, I would try to co-opt every single leader, try to suck for support, bring them out to wherever the fuck I have my big ass meetings, fly everybody in private jets, talk about the climate crisis.
All organizations have to follow the same rules.
Yeah. That's wild.
Recruitment is an important facet of all.
We have to get some young global leaders.
Well, understand this is the only reason that we can talk about these big Illuminati-like entities at this period of time. It's just because of time. Like, they aged out. Like, you can't get in new, so everybody got decrepit over there, and they can't exchange, really.
Seem even more serious when looking at the case of Jeffrey Epstein. Reports suggest that individuals connected to him were not fully held accountable. One name often mentioned is Luc Brunel, who was said to be a close associate. There are claims that he offered to reveal details about a larger network in exchange for protection, but this was not acted on. Later, he was found dead in prison, adding more questions to an already controversial case.
And this is an FBI file that says one of Epstein's, it says what appears to say BFs, best friends perhaps, Luc Brunel, has, quote, helped get girls. He is wanting to cooperate. And it goes on to discuss a plan for that and that he's hired a lawyer and how that would work. And so these are notes that date all the way back to a period where Brunel was believed to have considered cooperating. If you haven't heard of him, if you haven't followed this case as closely, he's one of the key officials because he held himself out as a kind of modeling scout. He did, and that's debated over whether he was actually an alleged sex trafficker, but that was one of the tools they would use. He went into businesses that had arrangements with Epstein. He was on the flights a lot. So his name was one of those that had been around before.
There are also claims linking medical professionals to this wider story. It's alleged that some of the same types of doctors involved in labeling figures like Wendy Williams and Dave Chappelle were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Reports, including reviews of Epstein-related files, suggest he had relationships with doctors across the U.S., supporting them through large donations, expensive gifts, and medical equipment. In one disturbing account, a young girl with a serious head injury was reportedly treated in a private setting rather than a hospital. It's also claimed that some medical professionals shared private patient information with Epstein. What stands out most in these reports is the suggestion that even trusted institutions like healthcare may have been influenced, raising concerns about how far this network could have reached.
This is a photo taken in Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. It seems to show a doctor performing a medical procedure on Mr. Epstein's dining room table. We looked through about 15,000 records from the Epstein files to understand how Jeffrey Epstein cultivated and rewarded a small circle of doctors as a means of control over the women in his orbit. Mr. Epstein dictated when these women got plastic surgery, even when they went to the gynecologist. And he could also take medical care away. In some cases, you also see the doctors help Jeffrey Epstein maintain that control over these women's lives. Here's one really striking example. Jeffrey Epstein is flying back from his island in the Virgin Islands to New York with a young woman who has suffered a really serious injury. He reaches out to somebody named Eva Dubin, former girlfriend of his, and the founder of the Dubin Breast Center at Mount Sinai. And he says, this woman fell off the ATV and needs stitches in her forehead. Can you organize? She responds, okay, Jess Ting, plastic surgeon at Mount Sinai, is standing by. Call me as soon as you land. And then you see the next day from Jeffrey Epstein, Dr. Ting put 35 stitches in her head, laid out on the dining room table. And that brings us back to this photo, which appears to be of Dr. Ting. Dr. Ting declined comment on this photo. When we talked to medical experts, they said, there's no way you do this if you were putting the patient's needs first. If you were doing that, you just take her to the hospital. There's much more equipment, there's many more people, the risk of infection is lower. The only reason you do this is if you were putting somebody else's needs first.
One of the country's most prominent physicians is in the Epstein files, and the emails look pretty damning. Dr. Peter Attia is a longevity doctor who is a New York Times bestselling author and the host of a popular podcast. Here's an alleged email from Dr. Peter Attia to Leslie Groff, who was one of Epstein's assistants. And it says, no, thank you so much. See you next time. Hopefully JE in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into JE withdrawal when I don't see him. And this email apparently between Dr. Attia and Jeffrey Epstein with the subject, got a fresh shipment. You the biggest problem with becoming friends with you? The life you lead is so outrageous and yet I can't tell a soul. To which Jeffrey E. replies, "'Fraid not." And there's another email with language that I don't want to share with you here today that is just not good. One person is reporting that there are 175 pages of documents with Dr. Attia in the Epstein files. Now, I don't know Dr. Attia, I've never met him, but I did not have this on my 2026 bingo card.
Another name mentioned by Katt Williams is Chris Tucker. Katt has said he once respected Tucker, especially after Tucker turned down a major role because he didn't want to promote negative stereotypes. However, Katt later suggested that Tucker became influenced by powerful figures in the industry. Photos and flight records have been widely discussed online, showing Tucker alongside people like Bill Clinton on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet. There are also claims that Tucker joined trips described as humanitarian visits, along with names such as Kevin Spacey. These reports have fueled ongoing debate and speculation.
You knew Jeffrey Epstein, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. We flew Bill Clinton and a lot of different. That was a humanitarian trip to Africa, and I met him on that trip because it was his plane. I didn't know who plane we was getting on, but it was a whole bunch of dignitary people who was with a delegation, and I met him, and you don't know people what they do in their private lives, so yeah.
But tell me this, Chris. He was on this private plane, and you could tell that it was a private plane because they called it, what is Lolita Express?
Oh yeah, it was a private plane. Yes. Oh yes.
But wait a minute. You didn't never go to that island, did you?
No.
It's important to note that being on Jeffrey Epstein's plane does not, by itself, prove wrongdoing. However, it has raised concerns for many people, especially after statements from alleged witnesses. In a 2015 interview, a former flight attendant claimed that young girls were often present on those flights. The plane reportedly carried many high-profile individuals, which has added to public scrutiny. Crew members have also stated that minors were on board during certain trips, including those where well-known figures were present, further intensifying questions around what may have taken place.
Wealth was so vast, you know, the fact that he had this fleet of planes. We've heard a lot about the Lolita Express. What happened on the Lolita Express?
Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms and the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. They did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always sex involved. Jeffrey couldn't take a 2-hour flight without having to ejaculate. Like, that's how sick this man was.
How did you live every day? How did you get on board that plane? How did you live knowing you're going off to New York or to the island or to wherever you were about to be trafficked to? You must have been a ball of dread and anxiety.
I was horrified, I was sad, I was angry, I was disgusted. I was a shell, and the only way that I could cope with what I was going through was, taking Xanax. And Xanax is like an anti-anxiety tablet, but it also, it took away that feeling of anger, sadness. It made me feel numb. It was a numbing tablet, and it helped me cope with what was going on at the time. It took a lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists. All these people knew what was going on.
Any other names together. The police are out on stage, they've cut to commercial, you didn't see what happened. By the time they come out, people have been removed, it goes on. It's certain ways things are handled when it's not intentional. When things go smoothly, but they seem chaotic, that means there was forethought and a plan. Somebody, even if it looks like, Janet Jackson just had a wardrobe malfunction. Yeah, there's no such thing.
Correct.
I don't care who you blaming.
I believe that. I believe that.
Somebody benefited. So in all of these situations, there's a business involved and there's real money involved, and somebody's benefiting from this thing that looks like, oh, that just happened. Nah, no way. No way.
This is often used to explain why Dave Chappelle chose to walk away from a huge deal. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey, he shared a simple example he called the salt trap. He described how a baboon gets stuck because it refuses to let go of the salt in its hand, even though holding on is what keeps it trapped. For Dave, that salt represented the money, fame, and contracts being offered. The key difference, he said, is that he chose to let go instead of staying stuck.
Comedian Dave Chappelle left tens of millions of dollars on the table when he walked away from his popular Comedy Central show. A lot of people wondered what the hell was he thinking? That's a quote. Chappelle says whether he was thinking. A lot of people ask that question. Chappelle says he had a crisis of conscience and stood up for his integrity as an artist. He explained to us how stepping out of the spotlight helped him avoid getting caught in a trap.
It's so much bigger than money, though, Dave. It's so much bigger than money.
Oh, no, it was bigger than money. But you know what? I watched one of these nature shows one time, and they were talking about how a bushman finds water when it's scarce. And they do what's called a salt trap. I didn't know this. Apparently, baboons love salt.
Okay.
So they put a lump of salt in a hole, and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt. Salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped. He can't get his hand out. Now, if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt. Then the bushman just comes, takes the baboon, throws him in the cage, and gives him all the salt he wants. And then the baboon gets thirsty. The bushman lets him out the cage. The first place the baboon runs to is water. The bushman follows him, and they both drink to their fill. And in that analogy, I felt like the baboon. But I was smart enough to let go of the salt.
Isn't that a great analogy?
What an
guys?
analogy.
I know. He's very, very thoughtful and very, very smart.
If even part of what Katt Williams is saying is true, then this goes beyond just a few celebrities. It raises bigger questions about how power works behind the scenes, who gets supported, who gets shut down, and why some people are quickly labeled as unstable when they stop following the system. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. These stories are changing quickly, and there's always more to uncover. Share your thoughts as well. Do you think it's all just coincidence, or could there be something deeper going on?